I love this book. I blurbed it. I believed in it. I saw an early copy of it. And I've always loved you as a media critic. It's one of the things that made me reach out to you when we were getting ready to launch the show. And the job was never offered to anybody other than you. You were the person I wanted. You're the person I got for a good reason, because you've always been very sensible when it comes to covering the news. You did a stint at CNN. You did a stint at The Blaze. You've been somebody who's seen how the media's worked from the inside, from the underbelly, for many, many years. And your conclusion is you love it, but it's disgusting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, and I think actually you and I share a lot. I think we agree on most things. We disagree on some. But I think with the media in particular, especially over the last few years, I would say, 2016, 2017, but you and I started talking about it 2018, 2019, 2020, as we were talking about launching the show. I think we really see it the same. And that is that I think in a perfect world, there would be strong institutional press. And there will also be great independent upstarts. But right now, as we've seen in poll after poll, including last week with Gallup, it's at all-time lows in terms of trust in the media by the general public, and with good reason. I mean, the media really has not earned the trust of the public, and it continues to do so to this day. I thought on one hand, maybe Trump's out of office, things start to go in a better direction. It's actually, I think, gotten worse in some significant ways since 2021. And you and I on the outside in independent press are really, I think, carving a new lane. And that's part of the reason why the media is losing so much trust, is because they have these additional outlets now to find real coverage and to not be treated the way that they are by the corporate press today.
Yes. Well, the Trump hangover remains, even though Trump himself is no longer in office. But then came COVID, which I think did, if not, if at least as much, if not more, to destroy the relationship of trust between the media and the general public. And we know it was dishonest as opposed to just sincerely misguided coverage, because they never went back and corrected any of their mistakes on COVID. They're still telling us that we should wear masks.
Exactly. I think I talk about COVID a lot in Uncovered, and part of the reason is as you say, in the early days of the pandemic, March, April, May 2020, I get it. It was a totally new thing. People are going to be scared. They're not going to know how to cover this. They're going to rely on certain sources. I talked to Josh Rogan about the way science writers were corrupted. And then, the press just trusted the science writers. They must know what they're talking about. No, they're corrupted too. So I get it maybe early on. But then, as you mentioned, a total lack of introspection, no accountability, going back, correcting the record. And in fact, as you say, 2023, we're still getting stories that are completely, the term that the media loves to use, misinformation related to COVID. And this is not something that I write a lot in the book about stories that are kind of funny and a little bit fun, but this is really serious. And the media had a real responsibility here. You would think that they would drop some of the bad habits they have when it comes to COVID, but instead, all of those habits were there and gotten worse, as you mentioned, a hangover from the Trump era. And it's really damaging. I mean, I think that really harmed people to this day who now think something about COVID that is not true.
There's a great soundbite of your interview, because you taped your interviews with these anchors and people. You only took on the record interviews, which is great. It's one of your complaints valid about a lot of the media coverage, because that's how they get away with it. A lot of these smear jobs are just absolutely insane, where they just get all these unnamed sources to just go on the record and say whatever thing bad they want about Trump, about whomever. So you get Josh Rogan. He reports for the Washington Post. He's such an honest broker, and he's been leading the way on the COVID reporting from the start. In honest reporting, not afraid to cover anything. And it's great because he works for the Washington Post. So that interview is on tape, and I thought it was actually really interesting because he talks about how, we're going to play a bit, he was censored even as a Washington Post reporter. And what he realized through the experience was people are dumb. They're kind of, it's not necessarily this mass conspiracy. You also argue this in your book, Uncovered. But people are dumb. The people in charge of the levers of access to their print pages or to their networks don't tend to be very smart, like Josh Rogan is. Here's a listen to Side 18.
The reason that the media got this so wrong is complicated, but it involves two sort of, again, institutional biases. One was amongst the science writers, and when the pandemic hits, of course, we rely on the science writers. There's a whole field of journalism dedicated to science writing. They must know the most about it. This is their moment to shine. It's the once in a lifetime pandemic, and these are the people that are smartest on this issue. And what a lot of people in political journalism and national security journalism didn't realize was that the science writers were totally misled by their main sources, who are the leaders of these scientific institutions like the NIH and NIAID and all of the USA and all these institutions that, if you're covering them as an independent journalist, that you're supposed to be overseeing in a sense. You're supposed to be looking at with a skeptical eye, but these science writers were all captured because these were their best sources. And in the world of science writing, that's actually fairly common. Of course, it's common in the world of national security writing and political writing too, but for some reason, a lot of people thought all these science writers were above all that. Turns out they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you mentioned, Josh talking about the censorship that he saw, he reveals for the first time in my book. We had him on when he wrote his book about China and the influence that it had on so many different areas of our country and the world. And in particular, he spent a lot of time on COVID. An excerpt from that was published in Politico, and it was censored by Facebook. I mean, it was essentially taken down, and he would email Facebook, "Hey, what's going on? This is a legitimate story." And then they'd put it back up, and then they'd take it down, and they'd put it back up. And he realized in that interaction that I am a respectable journalist. I have access to the people who run Facebook. I can ask them, why is my thing getting taken down? And it can get put back up after, even if it has to take a few times. What about the average American who doesn't have that sort of access? What about the average American who's maybe saying similar things to what I'm writing, but getting censored or getting completely kicked off a platform and having no recourse for it? And as you mentioned, yes, the people in charge, they're not journalists, and they're not even particularly good at their job of censoring. And these are the people that are in charge and have real power these days in these social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and elsewhere, to shape the narrative. And that's exactly what they did with COVID.
Yes, exactly. And we experienced some of this ourselves when we had on RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and we had one goal because he'd been deplatformed by virtually all the social media companies. He couldn't get an interview on virtually any platform. He lamented on our show how he couldn't get on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's put on people like Dr. Malone. But RFK Jr. was, he said, a bridge too far. And we had to game plan this out for quite a bit to make sure, like, our one goal was to get him on the air and to not have him be deplatformed anywhere. And we did it.
Right. It was something that we talked so much about was doing the interview with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., which I think is point number one. But also, how does this live? And we are, just like Josh Rogan, lucky, I guess, to have access to people at YouTube, great people at YouTube who help us navigate these waters that don't really necessarily make a lot of sense. But at the same time, we're not going to sacrifice the editorial in order to have something live on YouTube. But if there are ways of going about it so that more audience can find it, then that's how we want to do it. That's how we want to make sure that we can find as much audience as possible. So it's a couple of steps, right? The idea of even having someone like RFK on to talk freely. I mean, we had him on for 4 hours. It was a 2-part interview. I believe it was our only 2-part interview that we've ever published. Yeah. And it was so important because we should be a platform for anyone, for any sort of conversations. Now, it shouldn't be unchecked. I think that's a big difference between us and some of the other bigger podcast platforms that do have on people like an RFK. It just is sort of out there freely. It gets censored maybe, and the audience is the worse for it. But by putting it out there, by fact-checking when appropriate, by letting him say his views, but also showing other views, the audience is really served. And it's really rare in today's media to go that in depth.
Well,
to
you
have
know
someone
why.
like him on. Yeah.
You know why. Well, first of all, it's ideological for many. But second of all, it required a shit ton of work.
Right.
And journalists tend to be lazy. Not all, but many, most, I would even say, are lazy. That RFK interview took all of us forever. Debbie Murphy, Canadian Debbie, worked so hard on all those fact checks, calling all these doctors, calling everybody. Like, we're not doctors. How are we going to, and we're not, I'm a lawyer, but I'm not an environmental lawyer. How are we going to fact check RFK, who knows so much? And a lot of the viewers would listen to the fact checks and they said, he disagreed with all your fact checks. And that's great. That's totally fine by me. There, in no way are we like, you must believe us. We just want the audience to know, here's a counterpoint to that. You guys are smart enough to make up your own minds. One of our sponsors today is Donors Trust, the principled, tax-friendly way to simplify your charitable giving. Cancel culture doesn't just affect comedians and commentators anymore. It also affects everyday, hardworking Americans. How so? Well, it can derail their charitable giving. This is an outrageous story, but it's a thing. Take Jeannie's story, okay? Jeannie did her charitable giving through one of the big national donor-advised fund providers. That is, until, without a clear reason, It refused to send her charitable dollars to a conservative nonprofit. Jeannie was unhappy. She writes in, I'm a conservative. I believe America's great despite her imperfections and that capitalism brings great good to society rather than government. Earlier this year, I requested another gift from my donor-advised fund, and it was rejected. Jeannie wanted a donor-advised fund that shares her conservative principles, and she found it in Donors Trust, the oldest and largest donor-advised fund committed to limited government. Do you want a principled partner helping you support the causes close to your heart? If so, consider opening a donor-advised fund with Donors Trust. For more info on how Donors Trust can help, go to DonorsTrust, DONORS, trust.org/MK, and you'll get a free copy of their donor prospectus. Check it out, DonorsTrust.org/MK. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.